What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Starfield being 30 frames per second and locked at that on Xbox console, so Xbox Series S and X. So we saw the Starfield event. I honestly thought it was awesome. Did a whole video kind of talking, gushing really about it. And then afterwards, Todd Howard did some sit downs, and there's quite a few things brought up. Number one, that, the retirement is eventually, seemingly, going to happen, right? Elder Scrolls 6, probably the last Elder Scrolls game that he makes. Honestly, pretty sad to think about that when you think 10, 15 years from now, the legends of Yoshi P and Hideo Kojima and Tetsuya Nomura and all these people, they probably are going to be retiring, right? They'll be in their mid to late 60s. So that's all really an aside. That's just to kind of butter you guys up for the more controversial topic we're about to say. And then he went into what it's going to be locked as. And that was the big thing that obviously, I don't know if it split the internet. So what I first want to start off by saying is I actually don't think it was as big of a deal as we thought it was going to be. Now, I do think it generally is a big deal. I just think, when the Redfall thing happened and you saw retailers with like the sticker on the game, right? Like saying, hey, it doesn't come with this at launch, right? That was such a bad look and just such a thing in society that I think in that moment, everybody was so focused on Starfield and saying, oh man, if this gets 30 frames, the game's doomed. There were some over-aggressive, kind of emotions with it, I'm sure, being said there as well. But I would argue, at least what I've seen online, it has calmed down. I think announcing it after the event, it does two things. And I would say both are somewhat valid. Number one, it makes it so that maybe you don't even hear about it. Maybe they did it on purpose where you're focused on the gameplay and you don't even know if it's 30 or 60, right? Now, that could have been purposeful, but in a positive way, they could have been trying to say, hey, focus on the 45, 50 minutes of gameplay. This is what you wanted. This is what we delivered. This is the main focus, okay? On the other side of things, you could say maybe they're hiding from it. And I did bring this up in yesterday's video. The only thing, granted, it is somewhat of a big thing, the game, obviously, when it comes out, that is going to be the make or break. I believe in them. I think I'm on the more optimistic side of the internet. If you want to put me in a bubble of, pessimistic, optimistic, whatever, I think I'm way more optimistic. I believe this is going to be a good game. At the same time, I've had concerns with the planets and things like that. And granted, when I play the game, that's going to be the thing, right? You can make a game like No Man's Sky look as good as you want in pre-footage. Cyberpunk, you can have game reviewers lying about it for all that we know, right? And then when we get the game, we say, oh, this is a broken mess. So ultimately, you need to play the game, okay? Now, I feel like what they showed looked really good, and I think it's going to, and I'm leading up to basically here, running, right? How will it run, the frames? So 30 frames per second, to me, I'll just say honestly, it doesn't matter to me as much as I think it matters to other people. Even with the Redfall situation, I'm not a huge person who cares 30 to 60. I know there are plenty of people that do care, so me saying that I don't care does not mean that knocks your opinion down, okay? You can think whatever you want. For me, I don't think 30 frames is too big of a deal. Granted, he did keep saying, like Xbox, right? It's locked there on Xbox. I think what I will give people, what I would definitely say, I want to throw my hat in and talk about just a little bit, the idea of, the world's most powerful console and the idea of, all these games, like 60 frames is going to be the norm, right? 60 frames, every game should be that on Xbox. The thing I will say, like, I've seen the counterpoints, I've seen the arguments on both sides. I think where I stand on it is simply, you said it. At some point you said. Now, you could say, well, technology has evolved in 3 years, and what they said back then doesn't necessarily apply. Well, they still lied then, right? And I'm not saying this as an Xbox warrior, an Xbox fanboy. I will say the exact same thing for PlayStation. I'm just going to call you out if you're a game company and you lie to me. It's not even that big of a deal. It's just kind of holding them accountable. So I will say that argument of, when they kept saying that in 60 frames per second, all that jazz, I get that maybe that was just, maybe that was fluff. Maybe they didn't actually expect that the technology of making the game would kind of outpace the console itself, right? I get that, and I do think that's probably true. That probably is a fair thing. Now, there's also the argument of, is this for constraints? or is this because of a artistic choice or just a choice in general with the game? Now, we've had even game developers chime in online on Twitter saying they feel that this is, and actually Todd Howard says it as well, it's a choice. They made a choice to do this. Now, some people have talked about the engine. Some people have talked about when you do get higher in the frame rate, it may actually cause a problem. People are comparing it to Star Citizen. I personally think it's a blend. I mean, like a lot of things in the gaming industry, you can't take everything at face value, right? There's a little hint of lies here and there. Now, does that make Todd Howard evil? No, not necessarily, right? But there is, I think, a little bit there where, yes, I think it's a choice. I think they went into it, and he's been very clear with that actually for a long time. People have found clips of him talking about it back with the Redfall situation. I think it was always planned that it'd be 30 frames. At the same time, I think the scope and size of the game mixed with the limitations of the Xbox, and I'm not saying this does not mean like PlayStation's better. I'm literally just talking about this. I think that leads to not doing 60. I don't think it could actually handle it. So I personally think it's a blend with more of a percentage on choice. There's probably maybe like 70% their choice, 30% they just couldn't have done it, right? That's kind of how I land on it. And, you know, you've had console warriors going on online and developers correcting them that, no, this is a choice. It's not necessarily the console. I mean, again, back and forth. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. You know, that's a saying, I think, somewhere, right? And like I said, I think maybe with the Redfall situation, it would have been more so a problem if they announced this like a month ago. I think announcing it now, I think maybe hiding, maybe not hiding behind the gameplay was purposeful and maybe the plan because you're not really focused on it. What matters is when the game comes out. And I've said it before, the biggest thing for me for this game is the game needs to come out and needs to run. I know Bethesda games have that natural like bugginess, like first week, first month. This game, in my opinion, can't have that. You cannot have a game. I mean, sometimes it's more than just a little jankiness, a little bugs. This game cannot be coming out and crashing every 10 minutes. This game can't have you flying up to the moon, even though obviously you can fly. I mean, like breaking the game itself, right? Going into like the coding of the game. It can't do that. So to me, that is the biggest issue. I think if it does that well, if it doesn't come out as a broken mess, I think the 30 versus 60 thing isn't going to be that big of a deal. And again, I respect people's opinions. If you say, and I've seen people say it, if a game's not 60, they won't buy it. I'm sure that's true, and I'm not diminishing that kind of mindset. I will say I think that's a minority. You could read into that however you want, but I think that's not a lot of people. So I don't think that's, if the game coming out in 60 versus 30, do I think that gets them like 10 million extra sales or loses them 10 million sales? No, absolutely not. Maybe a couple tens of thousand, maybe like 100,000 max, but we're not talking, oh, the game's going to sell 5 million instead of 15 million now because it's 30. There's no way that it matters to enough people to do that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, I'll be respectful to you as long as you're respectful to me. Thank you for watching. I'll be covering Starfield a whole lot more as we get closer to it, and I hope to see you guys there.